Hey everyone. If you're anything like me, you often find yourself looking for business insight in podcasts. And I'm sure many of you are also into meditation and reflection to help better understand yourself. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, decided to launch a podcast that brings these two elements together. It's a series of guided self-reflection exercises, but specifically for freelance creatives like you and me, focusing on the struggles we face as we try to grow our businesses, while also finding more happiness in the work that we do. It's called Thanks for Thinking. It's definitely an unusual format, but if you want to grow your self-awareness, find deeper career satisfaction, and make more money, then I think this podcast might be for you. Experience it for yourself and click the link in the show notes below. Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 137 with Anthony J. Resta. I had a great chat with Anthony. We talked about so many things, including his 3-decade-long journey in production. We talked about constantly learning and growing, being open to new tricks and technologies, collaborating with artists, being forthright and telling it like it is. We talked about sampling and creating his own tonal soundscapes through his guitars and drums. We talked about guitar pedals, miking guitar cabinets, alternative recording approaches, longevity and just being in the game for so long, reading contracts, and like literally everything in between. This was kind of like the Tao of everything music production and how to do it for 30 years. So this is a great conversation. I think you're going to love it. So with all that to say, here's my conversation with Anthony J. Resta here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Anthony J. Resta. Anthony is a composer slash producer slash multi-instrumentalist based in the Laurel Canyon area of Los Angeles. He is renowned for embracing both modern and vintage methods in creating vast and unique soundscapes. Gold and multi-platinum awards for soundtrack work include the films Twilight, Scream 2, Scream 3, and Varsity Blues. Other highlights include an HMMA Producer of the Year, a score for Elton John's Border Song with the Atlanta Symphony featuring Elton John, and scoring of Cuban percussion for Ken Burns' Unforgettable Fire. Anthony has worked extensively with musicians in Hans Zimmer's camp, including Game of Thrones solo celloist Cameron Stone II. Member of the Secret Sonics Discord community, Sam Ellis Peach, recommended I reach out to Anthony, who has graciously agreed to join me on the show. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Anthony.
Hey, how are you? It's nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I raced here just to make it just in time, and here we are. It's nice to meet you. I've got following you
Likewise.
on Instagram now, so yeah, the whole world's on Instagram now. So
this is where the audio community seems to connect, is on Instagram.
Yeah, it really is. There's a whole subculture for sure.
Yeah, maybe not for the Gen Zers, but definitely for millennials and older.
Yeah, they're probably on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. It's a learning curve for me.
Yeah.
So tell the audience a little bit about your story. I know it's long, and I'm sure you've told this many times on other podcasts and other interviews. Yeah. But just for me personally, I don't know enough. I'd love for the audience to hear a bit more about your journey in music and kind of how you ended up where you are today.
I love sharing the story. It's an interesting story. I started off as a kid in Canada. You know, my dad was a geophysicist, so we moved around the world a lot. I lived in Texas. I lived in Australia. Early on, I just was always fascinated with music. My mom was a big jazz fan, and she would play records in our house like 24/7. Miles Davis, Gil Evans, all that kind of stuff. Dave Brubeck. So I was
classics.
I was surrounded in that kind of jazz and stuff. I started playing. I studied piano and drums, and later on flute. But I started. My main focus was drums when I first started. And I got really heavily into jazz drumming, and it came to me like kind of in a whirlwind way as when I was maybe like 9 or 10, and I just got totally involved in that. And then my whole life I studied, so basically I took lessons and all that, and all the way up to studying with Alan Dawson, who's a legendary jazz drummer, and I started branching off in high school, hooked up with the kids with long hair, and started playing Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones, and it just messed up my whole world. But I loved it all. I was big into prog rock, like King Crimson and Yes and all
Rush.
that stuff. So all that stuff. So I went to Berklee College of Music. I studied percussion, classical percussion, electronic music, and all kinds of stuff. So that was the whole background. And then eventually I got into the recording studio. Bug came to me in the mid 80s. I got a Linn drum. As a drummer, I saw that all these drummers were out of work and all the songs on the radio had Linn drum. And I'm like, I'm going to have to get a Linn drum. So I borrowed the money from my dad. It was a lot of money. It took me a couple of years to pay it off, but I started doing Linn drum programs for people, sound libraries and sound alikes and all this stuff. So the Linn drum was really where it all started. And I started interning at studios. It's the usual path, working in studios. I did that for quite a few years, worked with various engineers, and slowly worked my way into production. And then from there, we can go into Duran Duran. That was the first break I had. I was doing performance art. I did really far out performance art. It was just crazy soundscapes over poetry. And I would,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I would get in front of an audience and scream like, get out of my way, you break happy. And I have all sound effects and all this stuff. So that was sort of like my launching
Where
board.
was this?
This is in Boston, Mass. Yeah, at that point. Mm-hmm. So I had a little room in my parents' upstairs, and I had a lot of old DBX stereo equipment, like 120 XDS subharmonic synths and compressors and old DBX stuff, and I just started tinkering and with these soundscapes. I would take weeks to mix them. I would literally go to my car 500 times over 2 weeks, and stuff like that. I had no idea what I was doing, but it caught. I ended up playing drums with Dale Bosio, who was from Missing Persons, and Warren Cucurullo was the guitar player, had left to join Duran Duran. So I sent him a cassette of some of my weird performance art stuff, and he freaked out over the sound of it. And they were in the middle of working on an album, and he was like, "Wow, do you want a shot at mixing something for us? This sounds incredible." So that's how it all started.
Wow.
Yeah. So to make a long story long, sorry,
not that long. It's fine.
All right,
you're cool.
So that was the beginning of it all, But I skipped the 9 years I slept under a grand piano, at Cortland Recording in Hanson, Mass. Working as a house producer there. I mean, with Bob St. John. I mean, there's I skipped so much, but nothing ever. They call it slow biz for a reason,
Slow biz. I like that. I've never heard that before. It really is. It takes I feel like it takes minimum 5 to 10 years to break through.
Everything
with this stuff.
Takes time. I'm still learning. I've been doing this coming up on 3 decades, and I'm still learning constantly.
Right.
It's just
there's always something to learn.
No end. And I work with young people, and I learn stuff from them. All the new music. I'm not one of these get off of my lawn, everything sucks kind of guys. I like, I like a lot of the modern production techniques, and I appreciate it. I mean, there's some of it can be pretty bland, but there's a lot of innovative stuff going on, and you just got to dig a little deeper, and you can really find it.
Yeah, totally. You have to be open to it. You have to be not closed off.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people, as they get older, they kind of close themselves off from the new music. They're like, "No, this is my generation," or
it's easy.
That's not me.
I can find myself getting like that occasionally when there's something somebody sent me the other day, and I was like, really? It's it's so monotone, and there was 3 notes in the melody in the entire song, and I was like, but there's other stuff, you just got to dig a little bit deeper. That's the problem I find, is that a lot of people have access to the technology, and so it's created a flood of just a ton of stuff to wade through. I think somebody said that Spotify releases something like 60,000 tracks a day or something. It's when I was a kid, it was there was a barrier to entry. It was you wanted to go in a recording studio and record on 2-inch tape. It's going to cost you $200 just for the tape before you can even start. So there was a barrier.
Wow.
And I think that barrier is gone. So that's why it's tough for people to get through the noise.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because the noise is really hard, right? It's so hard to break through. But on the other hand, you have the opportunity to do it yourself.
Yeah, and you can
get your music in front of people.
Yeah, so
it can be done.
It can be, and it happens all the time. It's just, it takes a little more focus and patience, I think.
Yeah, persistence.
Yeah, and the one thing that can have all the software in the world, but if real world experience, it takes time. And that's why we're busy, as people get so far with something, and then we help them elevate it to the next level. That's a huge part of our business. Through COVID, we had to learn to work remotely with people, and that kind of took on a life of its own. And, we really enjoy that type of work. And now the other type of the business, that I've been doing is coming back. So we're super busy this year. So knock on wood.
Amen. What have you found that like some of the techniques that we've been doing through COVID of like remote, helping people record remotely, is that still happening now, or are people wanting to get back in studios?
No, I mean, people are starting to come back, and we're booking a lot of sessions now. But the other part of the business, kind of like I said, through word of mouth, it's gotten busy. I'd even do vocal sessions like over the phone sometimes. I mean, over Zoom, or through the engineer that I was working with, Jonathan, was in Maine, and I was recording a vocal. And we're in the same session and stuff. I don't really know how he hooked it all up, but yeah, it's crazy.
Like the audio movers or something.
Yeah, it's crazy now. You can, and with Dropbox and WeTransfer, you can send giant files. It never used to be like that. You can like record, ton of stuff and send it to somebody and, wade through it, back and forth.
It's crazy. I've been sending off my podcast to get edited with my buddy Gavi, and I zip over, the conversation. Yeah. Send over like 3 gigabytes or 2.5 gigabytes or something. And he edits it, rezips it, sends it over to me for like, QA. And, it's like...
There you go. It's a new world. Yeah, it's a new world.
It is a new world. I wanted to ask you a little bit, looking back on your journey, were there any mentors or anybody specifically that kind of helped you figure things out when you were maybe lost? Oh,
tons. I mean, geez, there's so many. I mean, well, my first partner, like in the production world, was Bob St. John. He's a multi-Grammy award-winning mixer. He's in Miami now, but we worked together for a dozen years, and he was just a really gifted engineer. And as much as I record stuff, I mean, I have a full-time engineer who's been working with me now 20 years, Cariati Suteja. He's brilliant too. So yeah, I've always surrounded myself with people, and I do a lot of engineering as well, but like not at the level of these guys. I'm more the music. I've always been more of the musical mindset. So I have mentors that are engineers, and I have mentors that are producers. In the 90s, I worked a lot with Peter Collins, a producer in Nashville. He used to hire me to do like programming and keyboards and things. And he was, 100 million records under his belt. Like, he was a tape op for the Beatles. So, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, if you look him up, Peter Collins, he's got an incredible resume. But yeah, and I would watch him work, and he was like a different style producer, like, somebody who kind of sits back and listens like a fan. And that's really fascinating to me. Instead of being somebody who's into all the technology and knows everything about, somebody who just goes by their gut instinct and the feeling that they're getting from a singer. That's the way producers used to be, and there's a real high level art to that. And his track record shows that. So sometimes I'll be working with a singer and I can literally hear his voice in my head. Don't emphasize the word "the," just little tiny things, but they add up. You got the emphasis. You have your emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Right.
What
movie is that from? I forgot.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was a movie, but I've heard Peter say that to a singer.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. It's
little things.
Totally.
It's all the little things,
Yeah, I mean, I got to sit in on a vocal session with there's a duo named Deco, and I don't know if you know them. They're Europeans, and they did a song with Alex Clare, who's an artist who's currently based out of Israel that I work with.
Oh, okay.
We did like a vocal session. It was just crazy to see how many takes they did to just get the part. It was like, I don't know. I think we had like hundreds of tracks at the end of the session, and then they comped it afterwards. But it was like,
that's incredible. Yeah, I don't go that far. I'm more of a like 5 to 10. It's like I feel like a lot of the best stuff comes on early before people start thinking. I've always felt like thinking is the enemy when it comes to music, and
it really is.
And the more people go down that rabbit hole of analyzing what they're singing, the more disconnected they come from the original message. For me, a lot of times, I mean, it's not always like that. And some people have a success working with that crazy, zillions of takes, taking words from all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that pop approach of like, there's this, exact, the inflection on this word was perfect, and then that one, and then like they can patch it together, and
then they cut and paste it all the way across the song.
Right, sometimes, yeah, totally.
Which is
absolutely.
It's okay. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I chatted with Ken Lewis. I don't know if you know Ken Lewis.
I know him from Facebook. I know we've talked on Facebook a few times. Yeah, he's wildly successful. Where does he live now? In Florida?
I think he's outside. He's in New Jersey, like right outside of New York.
Okay.
And he he was telling me how he does, and he's worked with like BTS and a lot of heavy hitters. And he was saying that he comps his vocals with auto-tune on.
That's hilarious.
because he's able to get the emotion out of the performance without thinking about was it in tune, out of tune, and it just completely shifts your perspective.
That's a very bizarre way of looking at it for me, but I can understand why that might...
for me also.
Yeah, I can understand why that might work in the pop world, but for me,
Right.
a lot of what the autotune is taking away from the emotion already